That's what everybody who cares about this country wants to know. What's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Let me tell you something. Dennis Kucinich showed up on the GOP website this morning of the Republican National Committee. At least 50 separate attacks on this man's proposals for peace in Iraq, for fighting the war against al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, for separating the two, for understanding that we need a Department of Peace that engages in diplomacy, which apparently the Department of State does not do anymore. The Department of State, as you know, was the exact place where, people were getting wiretapped who were questioning the intelligence that was coming to them in Congress. You remember when John Bolton was being confirmed to be the UN ambassador, and there was all this information that the senators on the committees wanted to know about who did John Bolton ask Condoleezza Rice to wiretap? How many times did they ask for what? They've been spying on Democrats for a very, very long time. We know that they tapped the United Nations offices of China and Russia, and they knew that those Permanent Security Council members were going to veto war because they were listening to their conversations. We also know that during judicial confirmations, they were hacking into the computers of Democrats just to see our strategies for confirming or not confirming judicial nominees. I mean, they've played dirty, but I got to tell you, when you have a congressman like Dennis Kucinich, and all of a sudden you wake up and you go to GOP.com in the morning to see, who they're attacking today. After all these attacks, I mean, they've accused Republican challengers of paying for sex and there's one guy in Wisconsin who they actually accused of wanting to pay. Let's get this right. The pays for sex ad against Mr. Kind in Wisconsin, along with a similar one aired against Representative Brad Miller, a Democrat in North Carolina, may be the most extreme. It says, Kind spent tax dollars to study the sex lives of Vietnamese prostitutes and the masturbation habits of old men, and to pay teenage girls to watch pornographic movies with probes connected to their genitalia, connected to the punchline, Ron Kind pays for sex but not soldiers. Now they're doing the same thing to Dennis Kucinich. And, I'm lucky to know him. And I do know him, and I know his wife, and I know his character, and I know who he is and how smart he is and what he does for the people of Ohio, let alone being a member of the U.S. Congress. And I saw it this morning, and I said, come on the show today. Just come on the show. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, Randy. How are you?
The GOP on their website, on the Republican National Committee's own website, GOP.com, they have 50 separate attacks upon you and your solutions to difficult problems with regard to terrorism and Iraq. What is it about you suddenly that is so worthy of their time and attention to give 50 separate attacks?
I'm not sure why, but I will tell you this, that I think that the Republican Party in Washington is quite concerned about accountability. After all, the American people are about to make Republicans accountable for us being in Iraq under false pretenses, for a rollback of our civil liberties, and for creating a condition where the world's mad at the United States and we're having difficulty being able to build relationships around the world. So my role in the Congress has been to ask the questions that have to be asked and to challenge the administration in the committees on which I serve. And one of them is one of the prime investigative subcommittees of the Congress. And for some reason, the Republican leadership seems to be concerned that I might be the chair of that subcommittee.
Are we talking about the Subcommittee on National Security, Emerging Threats, and International Relations?
Right.
What would come under the purview of the Subcommittee on National Security, Emerging Threats, and International Relations, and what might they fear if you did become the chair of that committee?
Well, the committee in the past has discussed issues that relate to Iraq and has jurisdiction over Iraq, Iran, 9/11. There's a lot of questions that remain to be asked, and I think that that the attack that the Republican Party launched against me is just a measure of the fear that they have that there's finally going to be accountability in Washington. And frankly, I think this is what the American people want. I think the American people are looking for a change in the Congress, which will ask why the lies on Iraq. Why are we there? Why should we remain there if we're there on lies? Has the administration built up a behind-the-scenes case for a war against Iran? What is the story on why we still have a Patriot Act, and what about the Military Commissions Act? I mean, all of the facts that the administration has distorted could achieve a public airing, which they've never had under a Democratic Congress, and of course, the committees that I sit on are absolutely relevant here.
Well, it's amazing to look at this machine gun type attack on you. It's as if they just stood back and just went, with a Tommy gun at you. And I know that the reason why they are attacking you is patently obvious to me. Everybody knows that you were right when you voted against this war, and that Bush was wrong, and that on every single solitary contested issue relating to national security, you have been on the winning side of protecting the United States, and they've been on the side of, well, let's farm out port security to the United Arab Emirates. Let's do that, and let's move the money around from New York and D.C. to petting farms, petting zoos in the heartland of America. I mean, if they had asked for protection for iconic things like the St. Louis Arch, no one would have a problem with it. But the way that they, appropriate money is so suspect and so wrong on its face, and the American people are not stupid.
Well, it's the way they appropriate money, and also it's the way that power is being used. I mean, again, this is about accountability. We're in Iraq right now. We have soldiers who are dying there.
96 this month.
For misstatements of fact, material misstatements of fact. I think it's going to be important for people in the administration to be held accountable. And they're going to be held accountable in the election, no question about that. But what about after the election? How do we sort this out? How do we get America to achieve a harmony again in our country? We need to go through a period of peace and reconciliation. And that's what you must do when there's been an entire crop of lies that have resulted in great harm being done to this country and to the world. So, again, I think the Republican attacks on not only myself, but on Democrats in key positions are really about fear, a fear of being held accountable, a fear of having to raise your right hand and testify.
Oh, God, what a day.
And a fear of losing power and suddenly finding that all the things that you said before, you're going to have to stand by.
Tell me something. If you had an opportunity to have subpoena power and to swear members of the administration, who would you call first? What would you ask?
Well, I think the thing that I want to be cautious about is to avoid any desire for calling specific people forward, because I think that the process of investigation has to move forward organically. We certainly need to look at how we got into Iraq and go into it in great detail and into the decision-making process and why information that was proven to be false was deliberately advanced as being the truth and became the basis for not only our attack against Iraq but our occupation of Iraq. That needs to be looked at. We need to look at why the buildup for a war against Iran. Why has this administration rolled back civil liberties, and what about the circumstances that they concocted with these various scare alerts to try to convince the American people that they should give up liberties that we hold dear in order to achieve a national security state. See, I'm looking at the broader issues, Randy. I'm going to be very careful at all times about naming names because you have to bring people forward. And I'm not, this administration hasn't always been careful about protecting people's reputations. People are going to have an opportunity, though. I think the American people want an opportunity for every individual in a position of power in that administration